Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, August the 20th, 2023. My name is Cliff. I'm a little bit out of breath because I ran upstairs to grab my beverage. So I'll kick it over to Tim and Dustin as we go down the table.
Him and Dustin just had an arm wrestling contest that turned into a game of footsie, and then they did something I don't even want to talk about involving that flashlight. And so I'm going to talk for a second because I know Goth is equally out of breath. Yep. We're talking about Lyme disease tonight. That's your preface. I think we're gonna related
It's
to ticks.
finally
Lyme disease and more.
to the limelight.
Butt
right.
stuff, Dalton. I ain't gonna say that's what's going on, but what was that?
Blinded by the light.
Oh, I had a gremlin.
That's kind of like Aleister Crowley. You remember what he was talking about with the anus.
wrapped up like a douche.
No.
Oh, that's Elton John. Never mind.
No, that's Manfred Mann in his earthbed.
Okay.
Now, how did Revved Up Like a Deuce, how are we supposed to gather that is what that song actually says?
Revved up like a
Revved Up Like a Deuce. I guess like a 72. Yeah, I don't know.
Just a bad.
A deuce and a half. I don't know. But it does not sound like.
Just a bad lyric.
Sounds like wrapped up like a douche.
Yeah, I always thought it was until one
But
day
if
I
it's
was at
like
Acme.
a
and I
deuce,
got
I
corrected.
think I'm going towards a poop.
Yes. I think that too.
Another runner in the night, like you're running from the vehicle, running to the woods.
Connected that one before.
No, that's the first I thought of it too. I went to one of your favorite places yesterday, Dustin. I went up there the first time I'd went at night, up to Greasy Ridge and freaking Carver's Gap.
Okay. Yeah.
And I took a picture of Elizabethan and at twilight. Like I said, I've never been up there at night. It looked pretty cool there. And I'll show you the picture with you here in just a second if I can.
Once the sun gets
Get it over there.
I always leave, but normally I have other things I have to do, so I can't stay up there. It would be great to go do like astro photography and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But
It was really cloudy.
Place for what do you call it? Sky to look at the Milky Way stuff.
yeah, astro
Is
photography.
that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a great place for it.
I guess I should have put those words together.
Yeah.
Do you have like a big lens or anything?
As dark as it is up there, if you just have a
Well,
quality camera, you can get some
Yes,
great
like
Milky Way shots. You don't want to zoom too much for some of that stuff.
Any of the lenses I have, it's like as long as you sit there and you just put it on a tripod, set it, and set like we're around here about 22 second exposure. Just let it go up and it suck in all that light.
Side reel doesn't move enough to.
Like 22 seconds, that's before anything less than 22 seconds, you don't get star drift.
Okay. I figured it would. I didn't figure you could leave it in one place that long without, having a tripod that follows it.
Like I said, if you want more than 22 seconds, like the people that do 30 seconds to like 5-minute exposures, the ones that get the real good ones. But you can get, I'll be honest, I haven't done it, but you can get really good shots at like 20 seconds.
Shoot, I bet you can get real good shots at a second or two in that place with as low as the light is and as much.
Because, you're a mile up in the air.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a little blurrier than it looks on my phone, but that's Elizabethan at night from the top of the road. I didn't realize that was Elizabethan over that way before because I've never been up there at night, never saw the lights, and it's so far away, it just kind of blends into the mountains. But that's Elizabethan. That's at 3X.
Food City and Pals.
Could you see it?
No. I bet.
But Food City is right there, though.
And stuff with those.
That's got to be.
The spotlights.
That's got to be Food City right there, though, right? That's the main drag coming up.
Yeah, if you look at the lights going.
This is the main drag coming up to 19E, and this
It'll be the
is.
very first building on whatever road it is.
So I feel like this would have to be like Food City and the jail and all that stuff right there.
The jail would probably be over here, wouldn't it? Or am I going the wrong way?
No, this is west over here.
What's that way? Walmart?
So, yeah, that'd be like Walmart would be over like this way.
Well, I have
Well, let me back
horrible
up.
brain
I've got a.
right now, so I'm not even going to try to flip that in my noodle upside
I've
down.
got a couple little further so you can see. That was zoomed in 3X.
I have a dumb conspiracy. Most of my stuff is fake, so just take it as entertainment. But when I put maps in typically on my phone to go GPS location, it goes beep, 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 and it zooms out and it shows you how many hours it's going to take her and stuff. Over the last few days, it's flipped it. Like, no longer am I driving, say, if I'm going to Georgia, the little blue line would go down, right? The map's upside down. Now I'm driving up to go to Georgia and down to go to West Virginia. I
That's
have to
weird.
take my hand and flip it manually. But then I got to thinking about that. Isn't that the way the actual Earth is actually facing? Am I wrong about that?
Well, you were on the top of it, kind of on the northern hemisphere, so you would be going down towards Georgia.
Because Georgia.
So why is the GPS flipping it then? No.
I don't know.
Maybe your phone's just stupid.
Maybe the Earth is hollow.
About a pixel for a while. I will say that it does have a little bit better reception than the Galaxy because we had them side by side over at a wedding the other day. Pretty out in the middle of nowhere, and I still had data.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Like the flagship
It's
phones.
like brand new, and you had that
Hers was
Galaxy.
brand new Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
She had the brand new Galaxy, and for some reason I went Pixel because I was feeling rebellious. And her phone is superior in every way except for she likes my camera better, and I know that I have better reception in certain places. Other than that, I still don't recommend the Pixel. I just don't like it that much.
It's like, my Galaxy has an alright camera, but once you get spoiled with a...
Yeah, but you've got like good cameras.
Once you get spoiled with a lens that has, a lens that's,
You got a real camera.
82, it's like 82 millimeters. It's like, once you get lenses like that and you're like, oh, you have like a sensor that's half the size of your phone screen.
Like, you're supposed to have a phone out or a camera, right? And there's always been the photographer, and that person, we all just went up and we looked away because they've got a picture and they're just doing their thing, and it's kind of, they're the photographer. But I feel like it's like broken people. They can't enjoy anything now because they got to look through a screen and record it. It's like, are you really going to go back and watch that? You're not going to do that. Just enjoy the fireworks. How many times have you ever seen... I've recorded the fireworks several times and I've never rewatched the video because it turns out the fireworks are better live and you're going to see them again later.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the point, but everybody keeps ruining their experience by putting up the screen up in front.
Okay, the only thing fun about recording the fireworks
Slow
is if you do it POV and you're sitting there and you're taking it and you're actually lighting it and you see the whole process of you going down. I mean,
It's fun when it's slow motion too.
And you see 400,000 phones.
Yeah.
Like this, and it's like, if you got to see all these other phones, and though you can just go to YouTube tonight and look at the same thing. What's in your experience?
Well, see, I understand that as far as going to public fireworks and stuff, but when you're doing it at the house and stuff, you never know what's going to happen.
Well,
you catch good stuff, and
back it up, Terry.
yeah.
I guess
One of the greatest videos of all time.
I guess I'm gonna say, I don't understand why anybody would film at
Freedom Hall or something.
yeah, or like Coachella or something. There's going to be a million videos later that night. Why are you not enjoying fill in the blank huge band? Because all the bands
before I, really was doing a lot of photography stuff. It's like I hardly ever. It's like if I brought my phone out, it's like I would take like one picture.
Hold on. 2 cars, huh?
What in the world? Is they really going to light that with him in that chair?
Back Up Terry.
Yeah.
You've never seen that?
2 different ways.
No.
Never seen Back Up
They
Terry. Yeah, they can, but I can't hear it. I was trying to make him hear it. Hang on a second.
No, I've never. I may have seen the meme, but I've never seen the whole video.
I can't believe it. As internet savvy as you are, what's up, Spill?
Oh, there's a couple you miss every now and then.
Yeah.
I like missing those.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to a couple of weird things.
No, thank you. I don't want to know everything that you know about the internet. So, all right, I think we got desktop audio turned on. So, can y'all hear that in the chat there?
But just play it and see if it bumps.
All right.
Bumps like an 808.
Well, of course it won't do that. But... All right, put it in reverse, Jerry.
Bag up, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse. Oh, Lord. Lord, Jesus. What you doing, Terry?
Yeah.
Terry, what you doing?
Hey, he's having a good old time though.
Lowest chair ever, too.
just think if they hadn't been recording there, because we had at my in-laws, we went up there and took fireworks up there, and B was recording one. She just happened to be recording the best one. I don't know that she recorded any other ones, but she said I'm going to do a slow motion on this one, and it was a pretty big one that shoots up multiple artillery shells out of it, and this thing somehow it blasted itself off of the platform that we were using.
You're supposed to spike it down.
Well, it landed. It did a flip and landed. First, it landed on its side, shot one at her dad's truck, nailed it, and just all over the yard. And B's got this all in slow motion with and she somehow managed to capture, the firework flipping and hitting the truck, and then the firework flipped back upright when it shot the one that hit the truck, and then shot the rest of them up. And
That's hilarious.
she caught it all in slow motion. It was great.
If we would have had one this year, it's like one blew up the entire tube. It didn't leave the tube. It blew up the tube, and we had it put a center block.
It squibbed.
We had to get the center block under it, and it broke the center block, and it shot just like it's like I lit it, and I turned around, and all of a sudden, it's like you hear boom, getting to hear tinnitus, and so like you see, and I shooting across.
You ever seen an airplane? Whatever.
Just like
my son went out a couple years ago, and he got an artillery shell and just set it on the road and lit it. And when they are on the ground,
just blow up right there.
Oh no, it blew up right there. But when it didn't go anywhere. It just spun around the circle when it did its shot, and just blew up out the road. And you don't realize when those go up in the air how much area that they take up.
What, about 60 feet?
Oh, it's way more than that. It's like 100.
This way.
It's like 100 yards, man.
It showers, because it's like it showers the entire area when we've had it happen, because we've done some less safe things where you're like, you put two of them in one tube, and then it's like, okay, two of them will work. 3, do not do it. Do not do 3. Because the first one shoots fine. The second one shoots about 60 feet up in the air, and you can still see it spinning, and it blows up around. And then the third one, the third one's catastrophic, and someone's getting burnt.
I had something similar happen to your rocket launch.
Or don't fill them with gasoline.
Oh man, I forgot to put the cool thumbnail that I made on the video. I'm gonna go edit that real quick.
I had a similar incident that you had with your sideways mortar launch, but it was over at my grandma's piece of land over wherever, near the Watauga. Incident that you had with your sideways. They, I don't know.
It's on the YouTube, B says, so I'll find that and we'll watch that.
It gets blown sideways, launches across the street, goes under the neighbor's truck and blows up. There's about 30 of us outside. This land is this is the context of the story. Here's why this is kind of funny. This land has been unoccupied at this point for about 5 years. It's just weeds, a busted up truck, the remains of a doghouse, a big pothole, and some trees, right? And the family just goes out there. About 30 of us, lights fireworks off this one night, and so he comes outside to hear the explosion under his truck. Comes outside, looks up and sees 30 people that probably all look like thugs as silhouettes, because we're all dressed like me right now. We all turn around and look at him. He just turns around and goes back in.
You want to know the funniest thing I saw today? It cracked me up. This just reminds me of that so much. I was on the way home, and I stopped at the gas station. And as I was sitting there, the constable was sitting over in front of the store there, and somebody was, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were trying to get their keys out of their car. They locked their keys in the car at the gas pump, and it was like I don't know, probably a 10-year-old Honda Accord, so it's not easy as a lot of the older cars to get them out. But they had a coat hanger they were trying to get over there, and then the sketchiest looking dude that you've ever seen comes over like, I can help you, you know, and he doesn't. He walks right up to the constable, and you know, doesn't look like he's you know, it'd be the first time he's broke into a car before. And I heard him actually say, I swear I've never done this before. But anyway, I walk into the store while this is going on. And I come back out, and they've got it pried out some. And then that guy comes back over from the store. Like, he says, I found a piece of wood here. And it's a piece of wood about yay thick. And he's going to try to wedge it in between the window, I guess. And the constable's like, hey, he found a piece of wood. And I walked by, and I just kind of looked at him. I was trying to think if I had anything in my car that I could use. And I stopped and looked, and constable looked up at me, and I just kind of looked at him for a minute, and I just said, carry on. It was like what came to my mouth. I couldn't think of what to say to the guy, but I told him to carry on and put the wood in there, and then I just drove off.
Another explosive news today. A truck burnt down in the Lowe's parking lot.
No shit.
Yeah. I got to see the smoke of it. And, okay, I saw Scanner Food. I saw they posted a picture of it, and whenever I left work, I drove by it and saw it.
By interior?
What?
Was the interior of the car?
The hood was up. I mean, but segue, I've been seeing this. It was a beat to hell Mazda Tribute that looks like it rolled over because every window was broken out of it, and they were taped. The only piece of glass in it was the windshield. The hood was, the front end was dented. The A-pillar had a dent in it.
So the old beater finally just called it
And I'm pretty sure there was like a guy that was like, he was sleeping in it a lot at the Walmart parking lot.
Was it engine fire?
B, send me that video.
The engine, like it. I mean, it was like rolling black smoke, and then all of a sudden you hear a big pop.
I think the car just kind of gave up the ghost on purpose because it didn't want to be a part of this abusive lifestyle anymore of duct taped windows. And
It
Could've
looked
been.
like it had been rolled over 3 or 4 times.
They probably duct taped like a lot of things on it, and JB welded the
It
crankshaft or
looked like the
something.
center console was taped to the roof rack on it.
do you
too.
remember the movie Brave Little Toaster?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember at the end that song Useless where the truck just drives on the conveyor belt and crushes itself?
No, I don't remember that.
Go back and
I've
watch
seen that movie a bunch when I was a
Dude,
kid.
go back and watch that movie. It's got so many like dark core memories that's embedded inside of us because there was a VH tape just laying in our house for no reason. There's a part of this movie.
Somebody just distributes that. It's like the death fairy, you know.
Yeah,
the
something like
death of
that.
innocence fairy just distributes, and parents don't buy the film.
You end up having it.
That one, and I had Balto too, where all the kids.
Balto's
all the
great.
kids in town are dying of diphtheria, but they're still having a fucking wolf race for some
Well,
reason.
that's based on a true story, though. Well, they weren't having the wolf race there, but you know, well, they started it there.
They were
but-
going to see if they could get. Which
Yeah.
was the fastest tape? It's like you send all of them.
yeah.
You send them all to get the next.
Whoever gets there first, yes, that's who wins. Yeah. But I always liked Balto. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that Russian
That was
goose.
DreamWorks. That was one of the very first
Oh, was
DreamWorks
it?
movies. If it wasn't the first one, which was the.
I just knew it wasn't a Disney, but
Put his middle finger up to Disney. He was the guy that animated all the original ones, and they wouldn't up his pay, and they kind of fired him when he asked for more. And he was
see.
like, "Well, piss on you. You paid me pretty well the last few years. I want to start DreamWorks." And now he's been a pain in their ass ever since.
a lot of people think they're connected.
A lot better.
They're hit or miss.
I like a lot of their stuff though.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about
Did they
Small Soldiers was good, and Small Soldiers is kind of one of those movies where they give away a lot about the real world in it. You know, as far as the way that the military talks and stuff, and that the way they
industrial complex
Yep.
goes.
Yep, they sure do, and a lot of these movies tell you a lot of real truth.
And how screwed the military industrial complex has done to indigenous peoples throughout the world.
Yep. Well, we've got tonight.
Eat the Gorgonauts.
Tonight we're going to be talking some military industrial complex. We're going to be talking about a different side of it, though. We're going to talk about the U.S. biological warfare program.
villagers in that town that they're all just like hand out checks? They'll just forget that we all just assaulted them. This won't traumatize the entire town, and that all their toys came to life and went evil Toy Story on them.
Yeah,
They'll totally forget this.
I'm sure they will. Well, just like I'm sure the Japanese forgot all about the bat bomb. Do you know if they actually did that?
I don't think they did.
So we talked about the biological weapon of the bat bomb a couple
It was
times.
the predecessor to the nuke. They were going to use bats covered with a little tiny napalm container on their ass.
yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
Some people say they actually used it and nukes didn't exist at the time.
one of the wilder. Yeah, they said a lot of people say they just used a lot of TNT.
That's if you legitimately had bats doing it, like what sort of weird Batman villain fucking hell is that?
Dude, that's exactly the kind of stuff they've been doing.
You
That's
can actually find the guy's idea online and get his perspective if you want to figure
Like,
it out.
we're just gonna take napalm to some bats and let them loose.
yeah. Well, they did a whole lot more than that. Biological warfare, or also known as germ warfare, is not only germs and micro agents and things like this. It can also be bats.
Like what happened a couple years ago. I mean,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Because their town was made of paper.
yeah.
Or paper and wood is what
Yeah,
they chose. Bats.
and they used they had hibernating
They had one of
bats.
the paper walls.
Yeah, and like the bat's supposed to go roost, and then animal cruelty would ensue as the bat exploded later on and burnt the city down from top to bottom.
Errant bats from the experimental bat bomb set fire to the Carlsbad Army Auxiliary Airfield in New Mexico.
5 times fast.
So that's one time it does look like it was an effective weapon, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
it burnt that airfield up. It looks like, or parts of it.
I'm glad they did do something good and made bats a protected species, so you can't do that sort of thing anymore.
Have you seen when the U.S. tried to
Puppies
Adam.
puppies are
Adorable.
what do you call it? Protected species too, but that doesn't stop Anthony
seen when
Fauci
they
from
tried to use the dogs
eating them
in
with
World
sand
War-
fleas.
I think it was World War II. I don't know if it was the Russians or the Germans or maybe it was the Europeans. They were trying to make a dog into a bomb that would take out a tank, and the dog would have a lever on its back, and when it ran into the tank, the little thing would like lower the thing, and the bomb would roll out under the tank. The problem was the dog, when it ran into the tank, the lever for some reason, as soon as it saw a ball magically roll off its back, would go, "Oh boy," and grab the grenade and run right back to him. So they had to try to alter that technique a couple of times.
But also segueing into bats being a protected species, if you have an HLA and you want to get back at them, put a bat roost in your yard. Because they're protected, they can't do anything about a natural species taking up like that. That's protected.
I got quite a few bats up near my parents' house, and we got quite a few where I'm at too.
We get a lot of them around here. And,
Bats, I just eat the skeeters.
I don't either. I don't particularly care if they're in my attic if they didn't poop everywhere, but
that's why you put if they're around. That's why you put a bat box on side of the house so they can roost in that. They'll go into that before they'll go into your attic.
I've never had any trouble with them going in my attic, but I've run into them. I've run into them in attics before, and they have been there for a long time, and there's bat shit everywhere, and you gotta have
pretty intense too.
Yeah, and you gotta have it cleaned up professionally. You can't just do that yourself, and it's dangerous to be messing around in it.
Explosive, I wonder.
It could be if it was in a compressed place. Yeah.
Because pigeon shit's explosive.
Yeah.
So I bet bat poop is too.
Oh yeah, it could.
Because I've only smelled bats in a cave, and then some random place we was out on vacation. I don't remember where it was, but the smell of just all that condensed bat poop and pee in one spot was as intense as any urinal.
So even if the bats weren't on fire, if you drop enough bats into an area, then you're
in 10
talking
years, those Japanese would have been really, really fucked with their noses. They'd have been really pissed off.
asthma out the wazoo.
Population.
The bat bomb was actually conceived by Lytle S. Adams. He was a dental surgeon. So they say dentists are crazy.
Which backfires and causes the crops
to
really blow up because there's no bugs to eat them.
The dental surgeon is the one, he went to Carlsbad Cavern, and saw all the bats. He was like, you know what? He wrote the White House. I think y'all need to make a bomb. You know how we could really get the advantage on? Well, he was Eleanor Roosevelt's. He was an acquaintance of Eleanor Roosevelt. So he wrote the White House, and he said he was intrigued by the strength that they had and that they roosted before dawn. So he knew most of the buildings in Tokyo were made of wood and paper. So he said, instead of concrete, we could put time-release incendiaries on these bats and send them down and drop them out of a bomb. And they actually started developing this thing, and like I said, they did burn up a U.S. Auxiliary Air Base there in New Mexico, but they never actually used them on the Japanese. They ended up...
Unless you want to believe that they did this instead of an atomic bomb.
Well, you know what? I could maybe conceive that they did, just tons and tons and tons of TNT, but I don't think the bat bomb is what
You don't think napalm or something would be more? Because there wasn't
Well, Nagasaki and...
People's shadows burnt to the ground.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki was,
I've
never been there.
Exactly.
Well, they were industrial centers.
Exactly. Well, my whole point, I'm not a believer, or a believer, but the origin of that conspiracy that they weren't nukes, that they were something else, like a firebombing or something, and then they told everybody, because, hell, the cities wouldn't know that they got firebombed. They would have thought it was some kind of new weapon, too. The whole idea of it was Nagasaki and Hiroshima are back. Like, if you go look at them, they look like bustling or riveting cities, and there's not people walking around with like an eye in the middle of their head, and meanwhile, you're not supposed to go to Chernobyl because it had fallout. So it's like the idea that there's... Like, all those people from that John Wayne movie got cancer because they did a filming on the side of all those testings and stuff. So why is there not more activity in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? There could be some god-awful stuff there. I'm just explaining the pretense of the conspiracy. I'm not a believer.
Well, biological weapon,
You've never
though...
been there, Goff, so you can't argue.
Biological weaponry, though, or warfare, it does go back a long time. I think it's part of the human condition. Like, as long as there's been people, they've been trying to find ways to use nature against them. And that's...
You look at castles, like all those holes and stuff that you saw in castles near the walls, it's like those weren't for like viewing and stuff. That's so you can throw shit at people.
Mm-hmm. Or they would throw corpses out into the battlefield. They would try to throw infected corpses onto their enemies and things like this.
It's like you throw like hot. They heat up poopy water and they throw it on them. So then whenever you get in sword battles and you cut them, they get infections.
So that's one of the older forms of biological warfare. The earliest documented is the Hittite text. Okay, we'll hit it up in just a second. The Hittite text in 1500 to 1200 BCE, they would take victims of tularemia and drive them into enemy lands and cause an epidemic. And the Assyrians would actually take ergot poison, which was famous, as people have decided. They dip their arrows, and Roman soldiers dipped their swords into shit and cadavers. Mm-hmm. So people would also get tetanus as well, and they would use
damage.
Yep,
plus
that's right.
5 poison damage.
Yep, and then that's right, crippled plus 5 poison, and poison stacks with everything else. So. In 1346, the bodies of Mongol warriors of the Golden Horde who had died of the plague were thrown over the walls of the besieged Crimean city of Kaffa. The specialists disagree about whether this operation was responsible for the spread of the Black Death into Europe, but they think that it may be possible that that it wasn't just from that was why that spread, not just because the rats running through the streets and with the fleas and all that stuff. So. Definitely.
Or it's because they thought the cats were evil, so they got rid of the cats, but the cats were the only thing keeping it at bay because they were killing all the rats.
Well,
and then the rats went rampant. That's what brought the plague heavy onto those parts of Europe.
Yep.
Right mindset, just wrong animal they got rid of.
Well, I was listening to. See, I made the mistake of introducing B to Nerdcore. Now I don't really listen to Nerdcore, but I saw a funny clip from Jeopardy where Alex Trebek was talking to a chick who was into Nerdcore, and she said, it's like rap music for people who are into sci-fi and math and physics, and Trebek just looks at her and he says, losers, in other words, and just burns her really hard. But anyway, B got introduced to this stuff, and she was listening to a song today that said that there was a country or a group that fought the Egyptians, and they actually used cats in battle because the Egyptians would worship the cats and think that they were basically had the gods bringing an army in against them. I don't know. I didn't catch the name of the nation of peoples, but yeah. But
an army of kitty cats in on me, I'm like, yeah, we're screwed.
Spill says she got no fireworks stories or anything fun. Dang it. It's been around for a while, I bet. Have anybody heard anybody got any holler stories? I asked for holler stories on Thursday, but I had a hard time. So if you got any holler stories, put those in the chat or email them to the ironmountainhour@gmail.com if you'd rather do it that way. Holler stories, we're going to get those together, and we're going to try to make a list of holler stories. Now, this segment of the show, as we get about 40 minutes into it, if I remember to do it, it's called Shit My Wife Says. So, hang on, and I'm sure your wife does some stuff too. I don't know if she lets you use it on the show.
Mute.
Oh, okay. But okay, so talking about coffee, and my wife says, "I wish I could drink coffee." She says, "I love the smell of it." She wants to put things in it to make it not taste like coffee. But she says, "I love the smell of it. I love the warmth of it, the sound of it. It's like a warm blanket." And then I taste it. It's like somebody farted under the blanket. So I have to put things in it to make it not taste like coffee. And these are just the things she randomly says that I have to write down so I don't forget.
Okay, segueing with that, at work, they actually had a little coffee food truck where they were doing something for a fundraiser, and it's I forget where it is. It's a place in Johnson City. He has a truck that does coffees, and everyone was like, "Yeah, coffee, woo!" Because so many people enjoy coffee, apparently, and everyone's like, "Ew, it was gross." I was like, I thought it was great, and they're like, because it actually wasn't like you could taste coffee in it. And they were like, "Oh, that's the problem." Because one of them said it's she puts 10 sugars and cream. I was like, that's why you didn't like it, because there was not.
Yeah. There's
actual coffee in this instead of just sugar water.
Most modern people don't like coffee. They like a coffee-based drink with lots of caffeine. Most people aren't even into a certain kind of drink. They're like caffeinists, if that's even a word. They're like just that bug.
I drink tons and tons of caffeine. I don't know that it does anything for me, but I do drink a lot of it.
You take a couple of days off and your wicked headache will let you know what it's doing for you. God, we found we took our honeymoon to Mexico, and we didn't know that they don't caffeinate their drinks down there. Dude, by like day 3, we had like these splitting headaches, and we just thought it was a hangover from all the champagne they kept giving us. But like, we couldn't figure it out. And we got to look. I just look at the back, and I was like, "There's no caffeine on anything." And finally, we found. I think it was the only caffeinated drink we found in the whole thing was like Fanta or something like that.
You can find coffee.
Speaking of Mexico,
drinking coffee and stuff. But yeah, there's no caffeine in their drinks.
ever try this Cerveza Pacifico Clara?
Nope.
My neighbor gave me one of these one night, and he's been working up in Abingdon, and or close to Abingdon, and they that's the only place they sell this around here. So he gave me one. I was like, man, this stuff's good. So I had him pick me up a 12-pack, but it's like the best hot weather beer ever. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like a Mexican PBR kind of, but like a fancy Mexican PBR. It's a lot cleaner tasting, really good. But I'd never heard of it before, and I've really been enjoying these. And it's like one of those that it's not, I don't think it's very strong, you know. I've yet to get a buzz off of them. I've been working out in the sun, drinking them while I've been doing the deck and the lawn work and stuff. They're just great for that. Back into biological warfare. So, like we said, it's been around since antiquity, the Middle Ages. Even in poison arrows, all this kind of stuff. Hypnotize enemies, they say, with basically give them an anesthetic in the arrow. There was a whole lot of uses of it through the 18th and 19th century, like the French and Indian War. They took smallpox infested blankets, the British there did, into one of the Indians groups of Indians there to leave about 100 Native Americans dead in Ohio County. Now it says it's not really clear if that was the direct result of the Fort Pitt incident or if the virus was already present, but I tend to think that if they took infected blankets over to them intentionally, and then there was a smallpox outbreak among the Indians, I would say that it came from blankets.
What year did that happen?
1763, 1764.
Look up what year Semmelweis discovered bacteria. I never even noticed this connection here, but I'm starting to doubt these blanket stories. We didn't know the bacteria world existed until a certain point, and I'm thinking that happened after the discovery of the nose. Okay, so maybe they did.
1665, they discovered the bacteria or the fruiting structures of molds in microscopes. In 1676, Van Leeuwenhoek discovered the bacteria.
Look up the name Semmelweis if you don't care.
Spell it.
Bacteria. Oh God. Sam Samelvies. Just maybe Google. Show us some mercy. Oh, you son of a bitch.
Semmelweis bacteria. Semmelweis bacteria.
There we go.
He discovered the causes of the cases of perpetual fever, a form of septicemia, could be cut drastically if doctors washed their hands. Oh, that would have been way later.
He discovered that if doctors would just wash their hands, that they could lower the infant mortality rate by 90%.
Yeah, that was the mid-1800s.
So this is 1800s, but my point here is, up until 1888, they didn't know that it was little tiny evil things getting inside of you.
They still would mess in your blood.
They really did. They were like this guy right here, Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis. Now there is a cult to him online. You're just going to have to excuse that. But that guy literally went mad because he knew what was causing all these babies to die, and the institution of medicine would not listen to him until he was dead.
And it really took almost till the mid 1900s to really make it to where people cared enough about clean water and hand washing. And a lot of the drops in mortality to a lot of diseases were attributed to vaccines, but at the same time that was the same time when they started having public water standards, having medical standards for hand washing,
it started
and
with
food
a cholera
service
outbreak in New York, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons they actually figured out that was what was doing it, because they actually a statistician or whatever you want to call it located one single water pump that was causing all these people to get cholera. So my whole point was, I don't know if the Americans that gave those blankets to the Native Americans knew that they were going to kill them, because we didn't know about microorganisms until 1818.
Well, he ordered his men to take the blankets from the infirmary where their sick people were and give it to the...
He may have knew, maybe there was a connection. He didn't know what germs were.
Well, maybe not, but he knew that if we take these sick people... If we take sick people around other sick people, they get sick. Or if we take well people around other sick people, they get sick. So let's take these blankets from these sick people and see if they get these other people sick.
Blankets and give them.
Yeah, whatever their reasoning was, it seemed like he knew that was going to happen. Now during that was when. No, they do. They do. Washington apparently had inoculated his soldiers against this because it was coming back around.
Having them wash their teeth in cow poop.
Is that how they did that?
We knew back then.
No, he cut them open and they put a little bit of the virus into their. They basically put a cut into their arm and put the virus into them. Well, they said that it did make them, that it made a certain amount of them immune to it when the virus was coming around. So I don't know. Who knows?
Sounds familiar.
Yep. In World War I, germ theory and advances in bacteriology brought a new level of sophistication to the techniques possible for bioagents. So they got into with all the different stuff in World War I. That's when the Geneva Protocol came out, where they said basically no chemical and biological weapons. But as they kept going, there's Unit 731. Y'all heard about that over in Japan? We should probably do a whole show on that. But it's kind of like, I don't know if we could even that's some pretty gruesome stuff. They did some really awful tests to people, and you hear about all the stuff that Nazis did in the concentration camps and the Holocaust, and then it certainly is not anything that anybody really wants to hear about, but Unit 731, some of the stuff they did was equally as bad, and it's hard to really say which one's worse or whatever, but like when you take a group of men and just experiment on them, like just for example, just freeze their arm solid and then shatter it with a hammer just to see what happens, and that was just one of many things they did.
Treatment.
That's what I thought of when I saw it, Snowpiercer. Yeah.
Spill says, I think in London and other places they would potty in their own living areas on the ground. Yeah, they would pee in a bucket and then literally throw it in the street.
Just throw it out the street.
Yeah.
Chamber pot.
That's where the word tossers came from. It's like people that would sit down at the bottom of the poop drains and try to find people's jewelry that accidentally got flushed into the stuff.
No shit.
Yeah. That's where
Throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, going. Well,
did you hear me, Dustin? No shit.
Surprisingly, yeah, a lucrative venture if you didn't mind crawling in human shit all day.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about that. I guess you'd be immune to pretty much any disease, though, if you could survive doing that job and not die from the job. It'd be pretty hard to get infected with anything else.
I want that fella's job out there in, I think it's Washington State, where he climbs that one tower every 6 months for $20,000.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Light bulb?
Yeah. It's like, I want that job. That's all I do. I do that change once every 6 months.
Spill says experiments done on mental patients. The haunted is what?
The heart there noise. Sorry, I'm just gonna have to lock your.
Because the doctor was so gruesome. Let me look on here and see. Sorry. There's a haunted island called The Doctor Was So Gruesome.
Oh, is he talking about friggin' Savile?
In the Orient, she thinks.
I can't think of his first name. He wasn't a doctor. He was a DJ in London.
Jimmy Savile. He was like the
but
DJ.
He would give tons of money to these organizations like these children's hospitals so he could have free reign in them. Mm-hmm.
And he was knighted and friends with the Queen and King like a demon.
He would have Christmas dinner.
Yep, every year. Even after he caught, didn't he?
I don't know.
The doctor's
No, I think he died. Maybe. I know after he was dead, they went out to this island that he had, and they found like a lot of horrific stuff, but apparently they've covered a lot of it up.
The doctor's name was Moreau.
Was it?
Well, you mentioned the island of Dr. Moreau, and the island of Dr. Moreau.
He's the other pedophile that comes from London.
The island of Dr. Moreau. First, I think that novel was written. That was a Jules Verne novel, wasn't it? From like the late 1800s.
Oh.
Let me look.
Don't know who wrote it. I know the conspiracy industry or conspiracy market on.
No, it's H.G. Wells. That's right.
Crazy
Okay.
over that particular topic because of the trans thing.
Yeah.
So they're saying if you can turn a female into a male, at what point could you turn a person into a cat?
Well, I can tell you right now, they've had the ability to make monsters for many, many years. When they did the Island of Dr. Moreau, when they were first coming to understand.
No more pain.
I used to have big and cut that cardboard out and make a heart in that thing and put no more pain.
Well, that movie was made in the 50s, the first one, and there was one made in the 70s,
Val
and then there
Kilmer
was
did one in the
one made in the 90s that was god awful.
I
But
had the girl that was in The Waterboy that had his lawnmower and she was the cat lady.
I was thinking it was like Gina Davis or something. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I do remember Val Kilmer and what's his face, the super famous actor Marlon Brando. Was all painted
Val.
black.
I mean, Marlon Brando was god awful in it. I think he was probably dying when they were doing it or something.
He
I
didn't
don't
have
know.
much of a role to play. He
Yeah.
was supposed to play decrepit old dude covered in white paint.
But that movie ended up sucking. But the point I was making is that movie, based on the idea that when we start to understand the genetic makeup of organisms, that we can use science to manipulate them and create whatever we want. That idea's been around for a long, long time. You go back into the ancient Gnostic texts, Jewish texts, and things like this. The Kabbalistic texts. Mm-hmm. They start talking. They've been throwing these ideas around for a long time. Chimeras was one name for them, but they've had the idea to combine different traits from organisms and create new organisms and life forms for a long time.
That one Russian doctor would do, where he see if you cut the head off of a dog and
Oh, God.
another dog,
Yeah.
and all that together.
It's awful.
Same thing was it. They would live.
It worked.
They would just permanently. Well, they would they did a monkey, and the monkey would. I think it would live for like a day before it would die.
If you really want to see
It was
something
all-
awful, you can see they could keep them alive without the head connected to the body, and there is video out there of it, or there was.
You just need a life support system.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to watch it anymore. Again, it was pretty awful. And then they've also got from videos of in the 1950s black and white.
Lesser complex. I mean, like a human, it'd be tougher, but like an animal that doesn't use as much intellect in its brain could probably be easier.
There's too many neurons.
Yeah,
That's the
like
thing,
if you like how you
can't
say
connect them all
if you
back.
did something more of like the lizard brain, your core.
But this is also the Russians in the 1960s, and the idea that they suddenly just stopped all these programs when we know that Anthony Fauci was having sand fleas bite the heads off of puppies down in, where was that, Florida, in the labs over there, and they had to, they moved all this stuff offshore. We've got Monkey Island. We've got a lot of the supposed biolabs that were overseas. Now, there was a big fuss made about in the beginning of this Russian-Ukraine war. People were saying that the Russians were really in Ukraine to push the American bioweapons and labs out of there. And I got this article when that started coming around. We had this article from PolitiFact to debunk it, right? And the Pentagon didn't admit there were 46 U.S. funded biolabs in Ukraine. Now, this was from February. Now, this has started in June of 2012, and the original story came out in February, where the Pentagon released a fact sheet saying that they had 46. They were talking about basically lessening the threat of weapons of mass destruction, right? And so the headline is, U.S. Department finally comes clean, admits in public document there are 46 U.S. military-funded biolabs in Ukraine. There's several headlines going on, and PolitiFact goes on to say, we're going to find their debunking here, their fact check. They say that it is false, just flat out false. I think that's right. Yeah, flat out false. And they go on to say, let me find the very end of it here. The Pentagon hasn't said anything new about the 46 facilities. We reported them in April. The June 9 release, the center of these claims states that Ukraine has no nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons programs. But we worked collaboratively to improve Ukraine's biological safety, security, and disease surveillance for both human and animal health, providing support to 46 peaceful Ukrainian laboratories, health facilities, and disease diagnostic sites over the last 2 decades. The collaborative programs have focused on improving public health and agricultural safety measures at the nexus of nonproliferation. Now, that sounds like they have 46 laboratories that they've been working on stuff in Ukraine that they have been calling for public health. But we can go back many, many years and see bioweapons being done under public health research, and we can also think of 2020.
About the Tuscanee's syphilis experiment.
Yeah, Tuskegee Airmen, not Tuskegee Airmen. I'd just like to say that because Joe Biden called him the Tuskegee Airmen. When he was talking about the Tuskegee. Yeah, exactly.
It was
how about in the 50s and what wasn't it? It was like St. Louis or something where they were actually testing what nuclear fallout would do on a city in America. Mm-hmm. They were just doing it in such small doses that that it wouldn't get by, and they did it for like 2 or 3 years. They were testing nuclear fallout in America just to see what it does.
Yep. And so they say that those are public health things, but let's look at this is just the Wikipedia page for the United States Biological Weapons Program. Officially began in 1943 from FDR's orders, and they built up a large stockpile of them, right? So they weaponized the following 7 bioagents and pursued research on many, many more. Anthrax, Bacillus anthracis, Fancella tularensis, tularemia. That's what they did back in ancient Assyria. Brucella, it's brucellosis. The Q fever. I never heard of the Q fever. The Venezuelan equine encephalitis virus. It sounds like the mad cow disease for horses, right? Botulism. Yeah. Staphylococcal enterotoxin B. We also know there was a lot of different biological warfare going on in Europe at the time, right? So this was a really common thing, and it's right out there in the open that they were doing this up until the 70s. But you get into the Cold War, and they started kind of going quiet on it and saying, well, we don't want to do this. But then in the 50s, they were doing, that's when they were doing the anthrax and all this stuff, all the way up into, if you remember, in September 11th, when all the congressmen, were under threat basically to pass the Patriot Act, and there were some holdouts. Well, then who was it? Tom Daschle, or I can't remember. There was a few holdouts, and then they got anthrax sent to them. And then later on, they used this anthrax to say, "See, the terrorists are attacking us at home." But then they later found out and publicly admitted that the anthrax could only have come from the biological weapons laboratory in Fort Detrick, Maryland. At that time, that was quietly talked about, years later. Not when it happened. They never admitted that. They used that as more of a reasoning that we had to go into Iraq after Saddam Hussein. They said Saddam Hussein did it. So they as recently as them, they have been caught using biological weapons or manufacturing them, and somebody used them. So the idea that they wouldn't do it is just ridiculous to me. Mm-hmm. But we've got our main event of the night. It's 11 o'clock, so we're going to get into that right now. We're going to get into... Oh, and I was going to show you, this was, they do have this from the New York Post. Hunter Biden helped secure funds for the U.S. biolab contractor in Ukraine. Emails reveal they found it on his laptop, according to the New York Post, who, was the one who broke the news of the laptop and was called a liar until the election was over. And then they said, oh, well, actually, the New York Post was right. All this stuff is real. So... This is, the New York Post may be a little bit, oopsies. Sorry, you elected this guy's daddy. But anyway, in these emails, they did find that he had secured funding for biological research sites from the executive department while his father was vice president. So the idea that none of those would have been any kind of, had any kind of military involvement when we had all the other military involvement that we had in Ukraine at the time, kind of silly to me, and should be pretty obvious that we're not just out there being good guys. I just don't believe it. But the main event tonight is this thread by Peter Paradise on Twitter.
How often are we actually the good guys, just being honest?
Yeah, for real. I mean, we're better than the communists, but it's arguable how much. I mean, our system is better, but because at least people eat. But as far as what we did over other overseas,
I think the mistake is there's no we and our.
yeah, you're right.
It's just the U.S. government.
Yeah, you're
in
right.
it. So
You're right.
that's why my hands are clean. That's why there's all this U.S. guilt online. It's like, guys, I've never been in office. I guess
Yep.
I voted. Maybe my vote's been used against me. But until the day I actually have my hand and there's a button that says save the world or fuck the world, I can't feel guilty for a lot of this stuff. I can just do as much as I can.
Well, we're gonna read.
Also, it's like when you look at people are like, oh, greenhouse pollution. It's like, oh, you look at it, the top 3 polluters in this world: China, India, and the U.S. military.
Yep.
Our military is the 3rd biggest polluter on the planet for like greenhouse gases and other stuff.
Because all the bombs.
Well, that and just like whenever
Constant jet travel and
the constant jet travel, and
ships.
whenever they go somewhere, like whenever they occupy something and leave it, it's like in shambles
Yeah.
and just.
Well, let's check into this thread from Peter Paradise. With COVID's man-made origins being revealed, it's worth re-examining the dark origins of Lyme disease, another bioweapon leak that continues to infect millions of Americans. And I have a little thread on how this is relevant today with the resurgence.
And with the margarita disease.
Alpha gal.
Huh?
Alpha gal. No, I don't know about the margarita disease.
I was making a joke.
Lost his salt shaker.
Oh. No, I don't think so.
Like
Not lime.
Yeah.
He went over my head.
I think that Long Island should belong to Connecticut. I think Connecticut should take that.
Take it back.
You know what? Like, look at this. I never
Yeah.
realized
All they'd have to do is take the one
this right here.
entryway.
You're going to tell me Long Island, any of these people relate to these people up here in the city?
Well, but
There's no. Oh, the city's here, so never mind. Why is Long? Hold on. New York City. You bunch of hypocrites. You fuckers are a part of Long Island. You're going to sit there and act like you're not. You're connected.
you have to go through New York City to get to Long Island unless you
people
take
in the city, you go, oh, they're Long
unless you
Island.
take the ferry.
You're on there too. You're just the tip of it. Tip of the shaft.
Well, Lyme disease, the alpha gals, if y'all have heard about that, it's a disease that causes you to have a violent anaphylactic-like reaction to eating meat. There's been a resurgence in this disease here lately, and there is some history of it being carried by the Lone Star tick. But as we're going to see in this thread, it wouldn't be the first tick-borne disease, but there may be other ways this, certain jabs may be spreading a certain kind of protein that makes you a crystallized protein that makes
More
you
content than a tick on a dog's dick.
That's right. Well, you would not be content, Dustin, because I know you like to eat meat. And if you were to be infected with alpha gal, you would not be able to eat meat at least for probably a couple of years, and then maybe never again, because it would make, at least like beef, you wouldn't be able to eat beef. So a lot of people are saying that this is the plan
That would be horrible.
to push us to insect and soy
Red
protein.
meat is one of the best sources of like nutrients.
Yep, it's
like
omega-3 fatty acids and all kinds of good stuff, except for organ meat.
Got a solution to all the world's problems. Eat gator.
Hey, gator's good for you.
Proven gator has the most protein per ounce or
The
weight or
the Inuit diet. I forget. I read a report that a man did on the Inuit diet in the early 1900s, and he went up there and they gave the lean cuts of meat to the dogs, and the people ate all the fattiest cuts of meat, and that was all they ate was fatty meats and organ meats. And these guys didn't have any diseases. They had all the vitamins and nutrients that they needed because the organ meats carried all of it.
How long did they do this?
Well, this guy, he studied him for a while, and then he did the diet himself as an experiment. They hospitalized him while he did it because all the doctors were saying, "Man, you're gonna
There's certain things that can get you.
you're gonna kill yourself doing this." So he did it, and he was fine until the doctors that he was under their care while he was doing it convinced him that you can't keep doing this. You're going to have to eat some vegetables and greens and stuff. So he did, and he got really sick. And he said, screw you guys, I'm going to go back to just organ meats and fatty meat. And they continued to monitor him, and all his levels on his proteins and his vitamins and everything was where it should have been. And there was like seal and bear organ meats mostly.
I can see the fatty stuff, but there's certain organs, like I know that the Dum Dum Liver King on Instagram there for a while, I don't know if you even know who that is.
Yeah.
Like, long story short, Dum Dum. He's a pretty smart guy actually. He got caught. His steroid usage got leaked or whatever. But he was selling this live out of the way of normal society, sort of primitive living things. But one of his whole marketing strategies was you eat a pound of this raw liver every day or something like that. Like, man, like even I knew for a second. I took the time to do my Googling. But I was like, that don't seem right. And sure enough, if you Google it, man, if you eat liver every day, you'll die of it's like iron poisoning or something.
Yeah, you don't want to eat it every
Your body
day.
can't process all
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, they of course the Inuit, they kill a big ass seal. The liver's going to only go so far among the villagers, and the fatty
Yeah.
meats are going to be But anyway, let's get back into this.
The only thing I'd have, the ADHD stuff, I have like a bad texture issue. So sometimes
Okay.
like the fatty meats.
Gristle and stuff.
Like, unless you ground it, like when you grind
Yeah.
a hamburger, if you ground it with some of it together,
Like
I
a
could do it
sausage.
that way.
So I can't do a sausage patty.
Yeah.
It's too gristly.
I like sausage
The
links.
fatty meats, I'm like, ugh.
It's hard. I
Oh,
tell you.
I gotta ask y'all. I gotta tell y'all about
Too
this.
much. What do they call it? Ivory. It's like nice fat. You get that off of there.
Have y'all been to Smoky Mountain Bakers
Uh-huh.
up in Road Mountain?
Yes.
I went up there and got breakfast the other day, man, and I got the cowboy burrito. Have you ever got the cowboy burrito? They take you some very nice, fluffy, scrambled, locally sourced eggs. They fry them up. They put you some fried taters, some onions, and some green peppers in there. They put you some bacon, some sausage, and they put it in a burrito. And then they put a sage gravy over top of that sumbitch. And I'm telling you what, man, I ate on that thing all day. It stayed warm for like 3 hours because it was so densely packed into that little carton.
They pack it in them wood stoves.
Oh yeah, man, it was good. And when I was over there, it was like,
But their pizza's so awesome.
yeah, I haven't got to try their pizza yet.
Oh,
The
it's-
bread, it's supposed to be out of this world, and the pizza's supposed to be really good. I went up there to eat pizza last night, and they closed at 7. So that's why me and B ended up driving up to the mountain. We're like, well, we didn't get to eat.
You're like, hey, we're already up here.
Yeah, and there's nowhere else we're going to get food in Road Mountain at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, so might as well ride up to the top of the mountain. But anyway, let's get back into the story. We're going to get sidetracked.
Dairyland is open.
I think Dairyland's winding down around then,
I think closing permanently soon.
Oh, really?
Bob's Dairyland, I'm pretty sure they're closing down.
Oh, I hope not. Let's see. Lyme disease being a government bioweapon is not a conspiracy theory. It's one of the leading mainstream theories about the origin of the disease.
So it's still a conspiracy.
No, it's one of the leading mainstream theories. So much so that in 2019, a bipartisan majority in Congress ordered the Pentagon to report on their weaponization of ticks. So here's the
Early use of words.
House of Representatives ordered the Pentagon to investigate whether ticks were once used as biological weapons. So
Does that tick all the boxes for them?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it ticks off regular people, but it ticks off the Pentagon having to explain themselves. So what is the Lyme disease? It's a bizarre tick-borne illness that infects 500,000 Americans every year. It's similar to syphilis, the bacteria is, and it has fatigue and arthritis-like symptoms, and also Alzheimer-like symptoms. And it was first recognized by scientists as a distinct illness in 1975, but it wasn't until 81 that Willy Bergdorfer discovered the biological agent causing the disease. And he was heralded as a hero, but he wasn't an ordinary scientist. He was actually a biological weapons scientist who spent his career infecting insects with the worst diseases known to man.
Actually,
And
they
there-
had Lyme disease.
And there's Bergdorfer himself.
See the little girl that was on the side with the Bell's palsy? That's what they thought she had. They thought she had Bell's palsy because the whole side of her face drooped. It was like a little seizure or whatever.
It's a common reaction to
And it turned out she
vaccinations.
had Lyme disease, but by the time they found out she had Lyme disease, she'd had it for so long that they, what are you going to do? Because they just run it out of your system at that point. Because you kind of got it for a minute once you got it.
In the 50s, the Pentagon began a bioweapons program to weaponize insects. The theory was that insects could bypass protective gear and inject a disease directly into the victim. Insects are hardy, and if dropped on an area, they turn wide swaths of terrain into hazards. And there's just some
That just
fun cartoons there.
it's like those people that come up with this shit, they really don't think this through long term. You're like, okay, if you go through and you dump these insects start reproducing, and if they can continue to have these genes that you injected into them, or however you did that to make them these bioweapons. It's still going to be there. You're going to just destroy these ecosystems. Nothing's going to work there. Then it's like the land is useless to you.
And that seems like a lot like what they did.
What is the thing about, taking over an area? You take over the land to use it for your own gain. So if you destroy the land, well, what's the point?
I think you're misunderstanding.
Maybe I'm thinking too logically about it.
You're looking
Well,
at
you're
scorched
thinking
earth
like a
people.
logical human, and I don't really think that people that go to war for their own profit think like that. Like, the best example I can use shortly would be when the King of England only took North Ireland by putting tons of people there and letting them live there because he knew that eventually, and it happened, he knew
What's
that
up, Wilbur?
it would separate itself and give itself back to the mainland by loyalty to the king alone. And that took like 100 years for it to happen. So like all these world rulers, like they're thinking long term, like 20 to 50 to 100 years in the future. And so like 3 Mile Island might be useless today, but those weird ass people on like those royal family people, they're looking at that going, that's going to be my great 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 grandchild's home one day after the pollution clears.
Well, they think they're just going to clear it out and they'll have it, I think. Because it comes back to this whole idea of the fourth industrial revolution. Just like the elite really wanted to replace a lot of humanity with machines during the third industrial revolution, or, well, all the industrial revolutions. But now they're looking at the fourth industrial revolution where they're not going to need us to really run the machines anymore because the computers are going to do that. So the elite only need a limited number of human beings. So it would not be surprised to me if they didn't care really that they wiped out a large swath of us. Making Spill hungry over here. What's up? Glad to have you in the chat, Wilbur.
Flexing so hard, Goff. God, make me feel hungry.
Take it easy, Spill.
I know it's a burrito joke, but it's still funny to me.
Oh, goodness. Let's get back into the thread by Peter Paradise. To weaponize ticks, Dr. Bergdorfer would feed the ticks diseases through tiny glass tubes where they'd waterboard these insects with diseases like Q fever, typhus, rabies, and force feed the ticks. Most of the weaponization was happening at Fort Detrick, where the CIA bioweapons program, they worked with the Pentagon on these projects. And this is a sensitive document here from 1952 where the CIA effected an agreement with the Army Chemical Corp for the performance of certain research and development work of the Army Chemical Corp at the laboratory facilities of Special Operations Division, Army Biological Laboratories, Frederick, Maryland. The purpose of this was to basically maintain research and development in biological and engineering sciences, and basically they say we need to be able to incapacitate and have lethal agents for biological agents, and also to be able to counteract biological agents. So joint project, Central Intelligence, and the Pentagon, and that does not look like a clean environment in which to be.
It's like a modern warfare.
Yeah, it looks like an old Cold War, man. Yeah, Black Ops Cold War, man.
Yeah. I was going to say just Call of Duty, but Modern Warfare just came out.
Now let's watch a real quick video here about what I was talking about a little bit earlier.
That guy's voice.
Well,
I watched 1 3-second video film earlier.
You're still gonna have to watch it.
I still don't want to hear his voice again.
You're still gonna have to watch it.
Bridge troll.
We were tricked into Iraq by the neocons, who told us that Saddam had something to do with World Trade Center, which was a
You see that
lie.
Bill's pose? Look at that.
And he had planted
see
the
this?
anthrax
It might be a
attacks
reptile.
in 5 days
Look,
after
I mean,
the
Kennedy.
might just have a
which was
cricket
a lie.
face.
That turned
I'm
out
just
to
saying,
be,
like one of these eyes is loading down.
the intelligence agencies of the U.S. military at Fort Detrick, that anthrax, the FBI thing, came from Fort Detrick. So somebody in the U.S. government who sent it to Patrick Leahy and Tom Daschle, who were the 2 senators,
I'm gonna feel bad if I find it.
in the week after 9/11,
He
who
just
were trying
sounds
to block
sick.
the Patriot
No, he does
Act.
have some kind
They
of
shut down
some kind
Congress,
of
and the Patriot Act
weird
went
thing
through.
that fucked his throat up.
Oh,
He's had a surgery to fix
so
it.
the-
Okay.
and then they told us,
Well,
really?
Oh, yeah, he's actually
Yeah.
good. His throat's just
Yes.
fucked up.
And the FBI, after a year of
Well, other than
investigation,
that,
traced the anthrax. It was a kind of Ames anthrax that was weaponized, and the only source of that in the world could be the U.S. government. And they traced it to Fort Detrick.
no, this guy, no, he's a Kennedy, but he's not just some schlub doing this. He's actually worked with like a lot of. He's an environmental lawyer who helped people sue when big corporations have ruined their property and
ruin their health, and that's what he does for a living. So he, even though he's a lawyer, that's kind of his background is things basically where people are trying to hide
Alleged
things like this. Yeah.
Yes, the biolab at Fort Detrick, the CIA biolab at Fort Detrick. Oh, somebody sent that in at the time the Patriot Act was being debated, and the two leading guys who were blocking it was Patrick Leahy and Tom
Sounds like he's talking through spring reverb.
It shut down Congress. The Patriot Act goes through. And what does the Patriot Act do? Two things. I mean,
hear the little vibrato in
it
there,
basically gets rid of a large part of the United
he's
States
talking to a master spring or something.
and allows spying by intelligence agencies on the American people, and it reopens the bioweapons arms race because bioweapons were shut down.
He sounds like an old Steve-O from Jackass. I swear to God, if you pull up a video of Steve-O talking right now, he's like, "Hey everybody,
I can see it.
buy my new products. They're called Steve-O's Butt Wipe."
Is it really?
It's basically toilet paper, I guess.
That's if you're Steve-O, what else?
Steve-O, you got to,
Yeah.
grifter got to grift.
Well, I mean, he's kind of old now, so and he's probably.
Well, he's probably old and beat up.
He's
But
probably-
he's a podcaster now. That makes sense for
It
him.
blew a lot of money from Jackass probably on his bad habits, so he's got to do
He has
something.
gotten clean in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
He's definitely.
No, he just still
pulled
has
stuff
that-
back around.
Remember,
Terrible voice.
remember when he came to the Sophisticated Otter in Johnson City about 15, 20 years ago? It was.
I didn't get to go because it was so long ago, but I do remember. I do kinda
It was like at the height of Jackass popularity, probably around the
Fact that it
time.
was at the Sophisticated
Yeah.
Otter really does date it, though.
Yeah, it was about the time that Jackass 2 came out, and they had they were like booked him to perform at the he was supposed to perform at the Sophisticated Otter, and there was really he had no show made or anything. All he did was show up and he was drunk and on coke and started hollering, and people started getting angry because he really didn't have a performance at all. He was just up there talking. Yeah, and it's like he thinks everybody's supposed to be like, "Oh, it's Steve-O." So he started busting the lights and tearing the place apart. And if you remember, that was about the time he was on Adam Carolla's show. And he got wasted and just busted his table, and Adam Carolla's like, "Hey man, that's that table was like half the budget for my freaking show." But yeah, he was in pretty bad shape at the time.
Reminds me of when they invited the Orange County Choppers on King of the Hill.
Yeah.
They just roll up and go, "Woo!" and walk off.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he did, except he was high on on alcohol. So, by 1962, the Pentagon began planning to use non-lethal insect-borne biological weapons to target Cuban workers before the '62 sugar harvest. And here's a document there on a most discreet and strictly need-to-know basis. We're going to have a plan to put a majority of workers out of action, unable to work in the cane fields. We're going to get them a non-lethal insect-borne disease. Specifically targeted the area, and we can obtain this from Fort Detrick, Maryland. So put it right out there for them. And you go on to the story of Lyme, in Bitten, the secret history of Lyme disease and biological weapons. Science journalist Chris Newby, she interviewed a CIA officer who attests that he participated in an aerial deployment of ticks over Cuba as part of Operation Mongoose. The idea of ticks being airdropped on a country sounds wild. We know that years earlier the military was doing the same thing with fleas. While ticks were being weaponized, Bergdorfer was busy infecting fleas with bubonic plague to test how the fleas could be used in an attack against enemy battalions. In 1954, the Pentagon conducted Operation Big Itch. Operation Big Itch, that's right.
Considering that's what probably.
Yep. It's a declassified document where they tested it on pigs to see what kind of disbursement they would need to be able to get it spread. And to test this, the government dropped over 1,000 bombs, opened over 1,000 feet in the air, and rained over 670,000 fleas over a test site. Even though 669,000 of the fleas were unaccounted for when the test ended, the 1,000 fleas they did find attacked the test animals, so it's considered a success. And they attacked guinea pigs with them to test it, and it worked. So they said, well, this worked, so instead of killing the enemy, we would make diseases that would incapacitate the enemy. And they wanted to vaccinate our troops against the diseases incapacitate the other forces with the diseases, and then have the vaccinated troops capture the weakened cities. So they needed to make brand new diseases where the enemy would have no natural enemy or immunity, and this is where Dr. Bergdorfer came in. He started mixing both viruses and bacteria inside the ticks in hopes that the virus would manipulate the bacteria's genes, triggering a mutation and thus giving birth to a novel disease. Is this starting to sound like some stuff that we've heard a little bit about lately? It's probably at this point where his mixing of pathogens probably created Lyme disease. While Bergdorfer was busy Frankensteining new diseases into ticks, he had the army gathering Lone Star ticks, which are super aggressive ticks native to northern Mexico, which he thought would be ideal carriers. And in order to test how they would travel if deployed in a conflict, the Army decided to release these ticks in Virginia along the paths of migratory birds to see what would happen. To make sure they were tracking the right ticks, they irradiated all the ticks with carbon-14. And this is the Atlantic Flyway Zone here, so they made sure they knew where they were going. And they tracked them from 66 to 69. They found they released 282,000 radioactive hyper-aggressive ticks inside the United States. And they used the American dog tick, the Lone Star tick, the Rocky Mountain tick, already well-known, well-known vectors of disease. All these ticks, different ones: rickets, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, alpha-gal, all kinds of stuff. Well, months later, Lone Star ticks, which weren't found north of the Mason-Dixon line, started showing up in Long Island. All of a sudden.
If you just kind of said this out of context to someone and told someone this is what the new Bond villain was going to do, they'd fucking believe it. Because it's kind of asinine. Just like, dude.
It's like something that
did what?
The Christopher Walken Bond villain, I forget his name, but it's like something he would do. So from 68 to 76, there was a lot of unusual tick-borne diseases. And they started having all these different cases that we looked at the beginning of babesiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, showing up Cape Cod and Long Island. And then the first 51 documented cases of Lyme disease started in Lyme, Connecticut. Made the cover of Newsweek. 43 states, protect yourself. It's dangerous to go out alone. Take this. Where did all these tick diseases come from? Some people said they came from Plum Island animal disease. That's where they say the Montauk monster came from too, right? Plum Island? That weird creature that washed up on the shore and was never really identified. And it harkens back to...
spray a DDT. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Kill him.
Takes you back to the island of Dr. Moreau, that creature there. And like I said, I'm pretty sure, like, we know they're making chimeric diseases, chimeric animals right now. They've been making, it's been public knowledge for over 20 years that they are making spider goats that have silk instead of as part of their milk. So when they milk the goats, they can collect silk at a rate much higher than spiders produce it, so they can use this silk to make a special kind of body armor.
Well, our lovely old Vice President Al Gore, Man Bear Pig.
That's right. Man Bear Pig. It could be a real thing. The Sphinx.
You don't know.
But DOJ, or Department of Defense researchers there, raised large quantities of ticks and focused their research on some of the same diseases that were appearing. Deer from Lyme would swim to Plum Island, and local birds would fly there to feed on the insects. And Plum Island, had a spotty safety record. A lot of people think that was the origin of this, from Lab 247, and all the fuck-ups they had with that. And you can read that in Michael Christopher Carroll's book, Lab 257. Now, the theory that the Lyme disease originated from the mutation related to the biological weapons program was the most logical theory. Nothing really happened, and they just tried to educate the public about not getting bit by ticks and getting ticks off of you, and what to do with it. But in 2013, a guy named Tim Gray was doing a documentary on Lyme disease, and diving through the data, he found out about Dr. Bergdorfer being a bioweapons scientist. So he goes to interview him, and after 3 hours of interviewing, he asked Bergdorfer if Lyme disease ticks had the similar, or a mutation of one of the bioweapons he created, and Bergdorfer said yes. Bergdorfer was at the end of his life and seemed to want to make amends for his creation, so he provides his notes, and we get documentation of him in the 70s, realizing he might have created Lyme disease. I wonder why somebody didn't do something. Then I realized I am that somebody, he said. And there's some of his data, the tests of it, where he's starting to find these things and they're showing up in certain places, and he's starting to realize this may be something of his doing. In 2021, they did a genetic study of Lyme disease, and they found that the Borrelia burgdorferi is what it's called now, and has more diverse of plasma than any other bacteria. They determined that Lyme evolved violently, likely through mutations, further supporting this theory. So you got all this putting together. Peter Paradise sums it up. The government infecting ticks with Bergdorfer mutated diseases on Plum Island. The government releases aggressive non-native radioactive ticks in the area. Bergdorfer himself admitting that Lyme disease was related to his weapons testing. Genetic analysis of Lyme disease bacteria showing that it's an unusual disease that evolved violently. The theory that the government responsible for Lyme disease is very strong. So you also, the idea that they had multiple rare tick disease having outbreaks around the time, all goes together. So it definitely looks like that the government was spreading this was making this. Now, we're not going to go all the way through the thread there, because we're going to go towards the very end of it here. So I want to look at this. So we've established, right, that the government will use insects, and lots of groups all over throughout history will use insects in biological warfare to achieve their means. They don't always want to kill you. They sometimes want to do other things, make you do what they want to do. Let's listen to this real quick.
Sort of, they have a weakness of will. They say, wow, this steak is just too juicy. I can't do it. I'm one of those, by the way. So, but so here's the thought.
He's talking about trying to get people to stop eating meat.
We know a lot about, we have these intolerance to, for example, I have milk intolerance. And some people are intolerant to crayfish. So possibly we can use human engineering to make it the case that we're intolerant to certain kinds of meat, to certain kinds of bovine proteins. And there's actually analogs of this in life. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can kind of possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
Really big world problems, like we need you to eat the bugs and eat the soy and grow the boobies and stay in your house and play the video games and be infected.
Indirectly, the soy industry is more of a hindrance than the beef industry long term. It's like, these big single crops, it's like, what are you doing? You're dumping all these pesticides. You're completely killing an ecosystem.
You're plowing the field. You're killing all the rabbits, all the squirrels. The ground.
Whenever the world was ending a couple years ago, whenever the Amazon was on fire, did you know that was actually
soy fields?
Yeah, they were bought. It's like they sold off so much of that and let them burn it to grow soy.
Yep.
I got in so much reaming on Facebook because of that, because I just tried to tell a girl that it was fake news, and all of her friends jumped on me. Maybe other people that don't live here in Appalachia don't know bullshit when you smell it, but it's really hard to start a fire unless you have a bunch of dead
especially in
a rainforest,
which we a lot of times are considered, like a rainforest. So it's like it takes
it's a lot.
Look, if you don't carefully arrange a fire, if you can, I can go out there right now and take a pizza box covered in sawdust and some paper. If I don't arrange it just right, I can take my lighter to it and light that paper underneath all that, and it'll burn the paper for a little bit, and then it'll go out. If you don't carefully do it, you can't just make a fire start.
The whole idea of it is the rainforest is not and has never been on fire unless it was completely on purpose, because every year they burn all the old soy vines down. They clear cut it, slash and burn method, and then they take tons of aerial shots of it, and they give that to all the environmental people, and then they go, oh, look, the rainforest is on fire. Look what we're doing. And it's like, yeah, but you're all the ones doing it. People eating the soy are literally the ones burning the rainforest down, but you're too... you won't admit it.
In the meantime, the amount of calories that you get per acre from raising beef is so much more than the amount of calories that you get per acre from raising soybeans. It also uses far less water, to raise beef.
And also, you get other things from beef.
Yeah.
You know, just even at the bare minimum, it's like you get leather,
fertilization.
You get fertilization from like their sinews. You can get, you know, their blood is actually still used in certain things. You can still
the hooves.
Yeah.
I mean, everything goes to use for other things.
The bones can get used.
And like you said, when you clear cut that field for soybeans, you're plowing it.
And you've killed how many animals' habitat?
Mm-hmm. How many insects have you killed to spray that? Meanwhile, you send a cow out into a field. You don't have to do nothing but turn the cow loose into the field for the most part. You don't even have to. I mean,
as long as you're just not, you know, factory farming. That's a whole nother.
We're just disconnected as people, though, because we have this idea that because the plant can't talk to us, that we're not killing something. But you're an herbivore, and every day when you wake up, something has to die for you to keep going. If you want to make it 400 cucumbers or one little sliver of cow, that's completely up to you. But something has to die for you to continue to live. But we're such dissonant people as far as how the world works, as far as our society is, we can't handle reality, and that's why people are so emotionally immature.
So a lot of people are getting this alpha gal syndrome from ticks, but not only that, a lot of people are seeming to have had, you know, certain inoculations that have caused them to have allergens to meat. Meanwhile, we have folks over that are you know, featured speakers at the World Economic Forum talking about how we can inoculate people against eating meat in some way or another, and that's one of their main goals, is to have us stop eating meat. So anyway, a large portion of this show is helping you realize here locally in East Tennessee, where we feel like that we all think that this is obviously something that we shouldn't be participating in. It's happening right here where we live. Your local politicians, your local officials are part of it. They, whether naively or knowingly, are putting this agenda into place, and we think because, you know, here in Tennessee we vote Republican, that we are protected from all this stuff because the Republicans are supposedly against this stuff. And no, they're not.
No, they're just as fucking bad.
Now, don't get me wrong. The Democrats are god-awful. The Democrats have some of the worst political ideas that I've ever heard, but the Republicans are not doing anything to stop them. They're going along with them. They're either Democrats in disguise or they're great big fucking pussies. So, either way, there seems to be nobody politically trying to do anything to stop this. So that's why I'm trying to wake you all up to the fact that this, yes, good for him.
Is running for Congress.
Yes, I wish I lived in Texas sometimes. But I want to save Tennessee because Tennessee is the front. Tennessee is the fucking, I'm telling you, it's going to be the nexus point in whatever's happening next. I'm telling you. It's happening.
I love watching the video. He's like, even if I don't get anything else done, he's like, I got an anti-gunner out of Congress.
Yeah. Yeah, good for him. So
if he gets it, it's like he said it'd be funny. He's like, if I get memed in the Congress,
yeah,
he's like,
and it very well could happen. But I think they'll like Brandon in Texas. He's originally from North Carolina, but he's lived in Texas a few years. Now, speaking of North Carolina and speaking of locally, I wanted to tell y'all about something you've probably never heard of: the Fudd Campbell site. Have you ever heard of that? Probably not.
No, I haven't
heard that name. I just can't remember what it is.
Well, the Fudd Campbell site was an archaeological site that was that the University of North Carolina did in Carter County, Tennessee. Very little information on this. I find it pretty fascinating. So we're going to look at a few of these things here. There are some research papers in at the University of Tennessee and North Carolina about the Fudd Campbell site, and they go into it's usually just like a side note in and we'll control F this document here real quick, and I'll show you how little there actually is on it. We got one mention: the Fudd Campbell site, lithic artifacts. They found 1,423 lithic artifacts, 661 ceramic artifacts. Now this is in Carter County. Carter County, Tennessee. Now, this is some of this in the Watauga drainage that they found here, but you can see the Watauga Reservoir. Oh, I'm not showing this on screen. Whoops. Let me go back to that. The Fudd Campbell site, they did find quite a bit of these. The Watauga Reservoir Survey, which is Watauga Lake, Around it, there were 112 sites and 6 single artifacts. So they found 25,000 artifacts, 3,500 ceramic artifacts in this. Now, they've done a lot of digs up here over the years, and they've done a lot of geological digs up here. They've also mapped out most of the cave system that goes up all the way up under Stony Creek, all the way up to the lake. This is a federal registry here from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and they get into just a little bit about this dig here up in. Let's see, it's down here at the very bottom. Here we go. In 1964, human remains representing at a minimum one individual were removed from the Fudd Campbell site in Carter County, Tennessee. One human bone fragment was collected from the site's surface by UNCCH archaeologists Benny Keel and Brian Egloff. The human remains were transported to UNC Charlotte for cleaning and storage. And this was part of a regional survey for a National Science Foundation funded project to investigate the origins of the Cherokee. And now this site was in the process of being destroyed by the Tennessee Archaeological Society. Why was it being destroyed? I can't find any information on why it was being destroyed. It says, so it's likely that the bone fragment is from a disturbed burial. The Archaeological Association of a human bone is unknown. No individual was identified, and no associated funerary objects are present. They go on to talk about a couple more. But I did find, I was going through the North Carolina, the UNC archives, and I found some photos. So this photo seems to show a whole lot more than one bone, does it not? And these were some of the artifacts recovered from the Fudd Campbell site. Now, the most common photo that I found from the Fudd Campbell site was a pothole in Carter County. And this is all you can see. They didn't give away the exact site because they don't want people going up there messing with it and digging around. But that's all we found is like over by the river somewhere. They were digging around, found some bones, which is pretty common in Carter County to find some bones over by the river, and probably even pretty common to find human bones over by the river. But let's look about what's a little bit different about these human bones. Let's look at, this is the archaeological collections at the McClung Museum of Natural History and Culture from UT Knoxville in 1988, and they revised it in, I think, 2001. And we're going to go and got to find the Fudd Campbell here. The Fudd Campbell site. Nobody knows how many days of excavation they did. There's some color photos that say a guy named Green and no notes, so very, very little available on this, right? And then we find out that they did some carbon-14 dating on it, and the Fudd Campbell site was about 2,500 years ago, standard deviation of 100 years. If you look right here, this is the common name for the site. This is the catalog, the archaeological catalog number. This is the lab number that did the testing right here. So they did this testing with different labs, and these are the numbers of the age of the bones they found there with radiocarbon dating. 2,450 was the oldest, and 2,365 was the youngest years before presence, with a standard deviation of around 100 on all those tests. So I just find it pretty interesting that they found all those artifacts there, they found all those bones there, and then they were like, destroy the site and nobody can know about it, and very little records. Why did they even dig it if they weren't going to keep records? Like, isn't that what scientists do, is dig, and they find stuff, and they keep records, right? Isn't that the whole purpose of doing it, is to have the records so you can understand what happened? Mm-hmm. But there were very little records there, and then it even was, described as little as one bone, and we didn't find a, funerary or anything like that. But it looks like that it was at least, it may have been one person could have produced all those bones, and it could have just been they found a dead body from 2,500 years ago. But it seems like they would be more curious about it. I'm not saying there's a big cover-up or anything like that, but it's just like, why did they even do all this, and why was it so hard to find any information on it? If you try to find photos on it, you find very little. So if we do Fudd Campbell site, Let's see if we can even find anything searching for it other than the ones that I already found. Here we go. Here's a view of the entrance site. And this, I think this is, yeah, there we go. Anybody know where that is? Because that's from like the 1960s, so it's hard to really say. Property owned by Fudd Campbell. I bet he only owned a double-barrel shotgun and a 6-shooter. Oh, Fudd.
Very, very quiet. We're doing cover ups.
I don't know if there was a cover-up or not, but it just seems like, doesn't seem like it should be something hard to find information on, you know. That's really all you really get there. And I did find, like I said, some of the radiocarbon dating and stuff like that. And oh, wait a minute. Now here we got something different here. The Andrew Johnson house was purchased by Fudd Campbell. So how about that? Now the Andrew Johnson house is now owned by Dr. Schumeyer, who lives up on the Reuben Brooks farmstead up in Stony Creek, the head of Stony Creek, up at the end of Blue Springs. And that was where the only, well, it was a skirmish, but it's the only it's only Civil War battle around here happened. And it was actually the events in the movie, The Outlaw Josie Wells, were loosely based on the events at the Reuben Brooks farmstead. And the guy Reuben Brooks up there actually owned one of the only groups of slaves in Carter County. There were very few around here. Most you had to go out to West Tennessee for most slaves, and then I think like Greenville and stuff had some. But that's why most people around here were actually pro-union, is they didn't really feel like they had a dog in the fight. They didn't have any slaves, and they didn't, you know, that was as far as they really took it. But then when the North invaded Tennessee, or invaded Virginia, the Tennesseans kind of said, hey, we can't allow the government to invade our brother states over here. So that was why they ended up joining. It wasn't for slavery for them. But at any rate, that's the story of the Fudd Campbell dig. There's very little other that you can find online about it. I did a few hours of research on it, and it was pretty much deep in university reports and university PDFs that were kind of tough to find. And if you got any information on any of this stuff, or if you have any information on the U.S. Geological Survey that was done in the 60s of all these cave maps, I would love to hear some of that, because I've had a hard time finding that. I think if you go to the regional River Authority Library, you may be able to find something on it, but it's been pretty elusive for me. But anyway, that's our show tonight. Anybody have anything else to say about that? I'm going to look in the chat here. Let's see here. They may have records, just not public. It may disprove one of their theories. Yeah, you never know. It's hard to say, because when those things come up, they
some sort of weird, like other
person that wasn't supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought.
Different. Maybe it was like some sort of like.
Maybe it was an alien.
Well, I could say that, or
an EBE,
a lizard person, or some sort of like leftover
a cat person.
Cat person, yes. They can eat. Or like, hey, what happens if they said they went extinct a long time before, like other human counterparts like Neanderthals, and
what if it was
the other ones?
What if it was a Sasquatch or the feral people? I don't know. But
the feral people, that would just be normal people.
Yeah, back then it would have been, yeah.
But a Sasquatch.
But maybe the feral people are actually a race of beings descended from the Fudd Campbell body. Maybe they're not actually feral at all. Maybe they're just a different race or a different species. Yeah. So who knows? But it's fun to speculate, and it's fun to find out little bits about our hometown that I didn't know about, and it's fun to kind of dive into these things. And I'm hoping, Renee, my sister-in-law, if you're out there watching this, I hope you can find me your research paper that you did for the Cranberry Corporation, because I'd love to talk about that on the Iron Mountain Hour. Y'all know the Cranberry Corporation it was a mining corporation that basically, there's a town in I don't know if it's actually Tennessee or North Carolina.
North Carolina.
It's right on the border.
Yeah. It's like you go across the border into Elk Park and you cut down like you're going to Linville.
Yeah.
off to that one.
Well, they still have the Cranberry School up there. The Cranberry Corporation educated the children of their workers to be good miners, and secretaries while they were doing this. And the cranberry was pretty big. And actually, I found some cranberry artifacts. Cranberry mining, I think, comes from up in Pennsylvania. And I think they still make respiratory gear, because I've got a respiratory what do you call it, a chemical respirator that I bought from the Cranberry One Corporation from Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's the same one or not, but it would make sense that the mining company was making chemical respirators. But at any rate, my sister-in-law Renee, if you're out there watching, I hope you can find that research paper, because she interviewed people who worked at the Cranberry, and when she did it, I think she was I don't know if it was in college or high school, but she had access to a lot of people because her family lived up there, and she was able to go around and get interviews with people and stuff that you can't get. Like, I couldn't just look up the Cranberry Corporation and find the stuff she's got in that paper. So I hope you can find that, Renee. I'd love to dissect that. It'd be a lot of fun. But we will see you on Thursday night. We're going to get into the news and current events now that our computer is up and running again. We got all the gremlins worked out. Newsflash, there was no Illuminati plot.
Got one.
Yeah, there was no Illuminati plot. It was a settings issue. Unbeknownst to me, a setting had been changed on the computer that did not allow my program to have access to the microphone. So what it is, but we did get it figured out, and we won't have to do the live streaming anymore, the mobile streaming anymore, unless we want to, which I think we've got a good plan to do a good mobile live stream for the show. And I'll fill the guys in later on that, because it's kind of a surprise. But it's still a surprise for you. You'll have to wait. They get to find it tonight. But we'll see you Thursday night, and appreciate you joining us. Like, share, subscribe. Go to that Rumble channel. Hit that link and subscribe there so we can live stream on Rumble. So let YouTube know they're not the only game in town. We'll see you next time, y'all. Night, Spill.